we live in a world where up for over many, many centuries, survival energy and fear have dominated the consciousness of the planet in a major way.
Mm.
Now that we're going through this awakening, this phase of awakening globally, where a lot of the dark energies are, being removed, I think that the natural consequence of that is going to be this continued evolution, is lightening up, this recognition that the universe is truly abundant, uh, that we don't have to struggle, life doesn't have to be a struggle, and all these societal beliefs that have been programmed and indoctrinated into for so long can start to gradually fall by the wayside, and we can start to replace them with a whole other vibration, a whole other level, a whole other consciousness. Now, it might take 5, 10, 20 years for that, or longer for that to happen, but it seems that seems to be the direction we're headed in.
There goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and it is a treat, and it's on purpose. It's a purposeful treat. Today we have with us Howard Sambol. Howard, how are you?
I am great, excited to be here.
It is such a pleasure to have you here. For those tuning into Howard for the first time, he's the author of Craft Your Genius Life. He's put together the Life Crafting Program. His whole thing for quite some time now has been to help people clarify their life purpose, find their unique genius, and combine them so they can actually live a really prosperous, profitable life from living in alignment. He combines some really interesting things in this space. One of them is actually astrology, which I can't wait to tuck into there and sort of see how that all weaves in together. But Howard, when was the first moment in your on your journey that you started to realize that actually helping people with purpose is my purpose? Because just before I let you answer that question, I found it quite slippery is probably the right word, because that's also the same prayer that I'm carrying, right? It's helping people find their purpose as the purpose coach is my purpose. And it's like, yeah, but that means you're only fulfilling your purpose if other people are fulfilling theirs. It's
Yeah.
contingent to that. It's a bit slippery. It doesn't feel very robust. And, so it took me a while to sort of go, I'm okay with that. What was your process and journey with coming
Well,
to
one of the
recognizing
really,
yourself as, yeah.
yeah, one of the really early experiences that I had, which is a bit humorous, is that I went to some parties back in the 1970s, and I would meet people at these parties, typically women, and they would say, they might have been in their 30s or whatever age they were, but they would say that they hadn't figured out what they want to be when they grow up.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that was the opening. That was sort of the beginning. And
Yeah.
I, back then, was just completely innocent. And though I had not done any work on anything, I was operating completely from instinct. I didn't have any formal trainings. Anyway, long story short, I just started asking them questions purely out of curiosity, nothing
Hmm.
more than plain curiosity to understand what their reality was. And then 30 minutes later, all the color in their face changed.
Hmm.
All they came alive. There was energy, there was aliveness, there was all this stuff. And they were just baffled. They were baffled. They were like, they said, Howard, how did you do that? What made you ask me that? What made you say that?
Hmm.
And I said, I have no idea. I have no idea. I was just curious, okay?
Hmm.
And then another instance similar to that happened at another event later on, and then subsequently a third event, similar event. And by the time it happened the third time, I said, "Holy cow, I better pause this, and I
Hmm.
really better take a look at what is going on here, because there's
Hmm.
something that is sort of unseen that is very significant going back." So what I did at that point is I did what a lot of people call reverse engineering.
Hmm.
Go backwards from what the result was to how did that happen? What made that happen? And I discovered that I had at an instinctual level inside of me this instinctual knowing of how to navigate or guide people through the journey of personal discovery, a personal awakening, discovery, and clarity that was instinctual in me. So when I reverse engineered it and I started to say, what am I really doing that's making this happen? That's how life crafting was born. It was born out of this very organic thing of just living it, just living it. And then, of course, as the years went by from there, more methods developed, more technology, more methods, more sophistication, more work in consciousness or growth. And given that I was already, let's see, I'm trying to remember. No, I was actually in that time period early on in my astrological journey also. So they were sort of running in parallel. You could say they were sort of running in parallel with each other.
Mm.
Anyway.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so you touched on so many points in there to touch on curiosity, the power of questions. But one of the points where you left off was, you just touched lightly on where you were at in your astrological journey. And I think it's intriguing to sort of think about, when you start talking about astrology and combining that with purpose, I can see it could be potentially a little bit polarizing, right? Because some people, it invites in the question of destiny. And destiny is one of those
Yes,
things
yes,
where some people are in on and some people are completely out on. It's like, because at
exactly.
the back end of destiny, there's like destiny's the front end, and the back end it's like free will. you know?
Well,
Yeah.
it's an interesting point you mentioned because I was a keynote speaker way, way, way back. I don't remember the year. I was a keynote speaker at an astrological conference, and I was on the subject of career choice and development in astrological practice. And I actually told a group of 30 astrologers not to tell people what career to pursue from their birth chart. In other words, I told them the complete antithesis of what they already believed that
Their
they
job
would
was
need
to do.
the birth chart for, rather than a tool of discovery and inquiry, which is really what its optimum role is, to plant seeds and to explore and discover and facilitate awareness. Astrologers, by their very nature, their orientation is to tell rather than ask. So basically, you have certain thing in Pisces, and you have this Jupiter over here, and you have Saturn over there, and this aspect between these planets is this, so that means that you must this or you must that. Okay,
Mhm.
utter nonsense, utter complete nonsense.
Mm, mm.
All right. So these are things that are worth discovery and exploring and seeing what are these elements and how do you experience them in your life. Not like I'm seeing on paper looking at the planets, but how is it showing up for you? How is
Mm.
it showing up for you? And what is the messages and what is the guidance and what's coming through? Of course, I can say certain patterns tend to point in certain directions astrologically, of course, but that doesn't define a conclusion. That doesn't, lead to any sort of conclusion about the decisions, the key important decisions. It's more like I said, the seeds and the inquiry and opening the doorway to look in certain directions and to make discoveries about what's real and what's true inside of me
Mm.
emotionally and spiritually, and use it, as a sounding board, as an inquiry type of sounding board. So astrology is a very, very powerful tool for life purpose, but not so much in the telling as much as in the asking.
I love that. I love that. And it harkens back to it's so interesting even just having this conversation with you at this particular moment in time for me. Because
Yeah,
recently I became certified in this thing called the Gene Keys, which is actually based quite heavily on astrology.
yeah, I'm
And it's
familiar
been a
with that.
really Yeah, and it's been really fascinating because I never for once thought I was going to be certified in something that was connected to astrology of all things.
Right.
Like I am
Yeah.
Indian, so my roots are very connected to astrology and that sort of stuff. But I just never for the life of me thought on this path that that would be there. But one of the invitations, and this is one of the things that I love the most about this approach that you've described to astrology, it seems congruent with kind of the Gene Keys approach was yeah, rather than telling and prescribing like this is what's it's an opportunity for you to reflect upon yourself and which part of what this your constellations are telling you feels right to you and how does it feel right to you, because it may, organization may mean something to one person but a whole nother thing to another person, and it's like allowing the inquiry like you've described to sort
Well,
of unpack and dance into your life. Yeah.
there's a lot of manifestations or expressions of astrological archetypes. What you see in a birth chart are archetypal energies, and you're
Mm,
seeing a mix of those energies. You're seeing a blend or a mix of those energies, right? But in terms of actual form, like as a form of a career or business path, or a role in the world that you're going to play, then there's many different variations. Just like in nature, we have flowers and so many variations, in any particular species of flowers. There are so many different variations and versions. Nature is just so abundant and so diverse in the
mm,
way it expresses itself. And I'll just to share another little story. Back in the days when I was living in New York, and I had a real strong intuitive head plus astrology sense of what would be an ideal career path for someone. But when I told them what I saw, and I was pretty confident that I was right on the mark.
mm,
When I told them, I got a very sort of humdrum, ambivalent, or just okay, like no reaction. So I
mm,
said, well, wait a minute, there's something off here. So then I started to put my insights in a sealed envelope
mm.
and not tell anybody, but let them go through their own discovery process. Invariably, what happened was when they made the discovery, it was meaningful. It was meaningful.
They
It was
owned it
exciting.
better.
It was
Yeah.
real because it grabbed them from inside. It came to
Mm,
them from their center of their being.
hmm.
So that validated for me that it was the discovery that mattered, not the actual information itself.
Hmm. Howard, let's go there. Let's ask the hard question. So there is potentially, if we're unpacking astrology, and it is a process of just purely inquiry, and we're talking about purpose,
Yeah.
how much space do we have in the choice of purpose? Like, do we get to choose our purpose in life? I know a lot of people
You
tuning
get
into
to
it.
choose, and you get to choose everything, everything. There is
Mm,
absolutely no limitation imposed upon you from your birth chart. I mean, I
mhm,
would say, to be silly about it, if you're 5 foot 6 inches tall, you're not going to play basketball in the NBA. So there are realities in life where there are real limitations
mm,
based on physical reality.
mhm,
But as far as a natal birth chart is concerned, you can be whatever you want to be as long as it's authentic and it's
mm,
real and it's true for you. Then I encourage it. Sometimes, though, what people say they want is rather a surface layer of the
mhm,
truth, and you have to peel the onion down quite a bit in order to get a deeper truth. Um, like back in the day, there were people who would just try to challenge me, and it was somewhat of a mocking, but it was also sort of, and they would say, "I want to be a rock star. Help me be a rock star." And they would think that that would stump me or that would make it hard for me. But in
mm.
reality, all I did was take rock star and, like you say, unpack it. Just break it down and just what does that mean to you, and what is appealing to that, and why do you want that, and what will that give you when you have it?
Mm.
And once you start to peel it down, you discover, oh my God, it's like a completely different animal that is no similarity to where you began.
Mm, mm. And I think a lot of that, yeah, I love what you're sharing because I sort of describe it based on the work that I did with Eckhart Tolle. I look at it as the way he described it is like we've got our inner purpose and our outer purpose. There's the purpose of life itself, and then there's our inner purpose is kind of what he, like, you know, each individual that is playing its role. And when the two kind of line up, there's a lack of friction, and we actually experience like a lot of, you know, okay, alignment to purpose. And the fascinating thing I find in that is just the, like you described, the layers that get put on
Yeah.
such that we sort of, you know, we can't even, and I personally feel we do have an innate sense of purpose, but our education models potentially don't foster that. And but it's an interesting thing to just blame it all on modern Western education. I don't think is also fair. I think, you know, just the way society is constructed is inviting us to be successful. And for those that are tuning into just audio, I've got the air quotes going with my hands. Um, yeah, you know, to be successful, but it doesn't encourage you to define your own mode of success from a really authentic place, which is what you described. That authenticity is really powerful. In your experience, how do you encourage people to come back to that authentic part of themselves? How do we sift through the layers?
Well, it's a combination of intertwining tools and systems and methods that all work very synergistically together.
Mm,
So it might start out very innocently
mm,
with just simple questions like, what do you truly love? What if we put aside all your formal trainings, academic, this, that, and the other, and you know what's on your resume and all this stuff? What is it that you truly love? And if you had unlimited time and unlimited resources, where you would want to spend your time? And that's only, of course, the very initial question that we pose to people. So then people will give an answer, but that answer again is only one little sort of stage, one little
mm,
interim step, and then we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And we use a mapping technique with software, sort of like a mind mapping sort of method, where you
mm,
can go down to the finer and finer levels. You can get very general, then you can work your way down to the deeper truths. Now, what really distinguishes life crafting from a lot of other approaches to life purpose is that we work with the emotional layer in a very, very big way, and we work with beliefs and patterns in a very, very big way.
mm,
So as you go down, you'll typically, for example, you'll head up against people believing, well, I want to be this, or I'd love to be that, but I know I can't because of, and they'll have a reason or an explanation for it, when in fact it's just a belief that
mm,
somewhere they recorded. So we teach them a very profound method for shifting limiting beliefs at the subconscious level. We get them to be skilled and masterful with that, and then we continue the inner dive, the deep dive as we call it, to the deepest truth within them. And again, it's clearing beliefs and going deeper, clearing beliefs, going deeper. And then, what are you feeling? What is the feeling state? Once a person gets pretty close or hits on that divine creative essence within them, once they get started in that territory, or they're deeply moved. They're deeply moved emotionally. They're like, their whole life is shifted, because now it's like God has spoken to them from within, and given them a sense of why they're truly here. And from that point on, it becomes the key vector in their life. Almost the same as like when people have NDEs. You've heard stories about
near
NDEs
death
come back,
experiences. Yeah.
and then their whole life takes on a different direction, because now they know their divine nature and their divine purpose that is now guiding them. So it's similar to that in a way. There's a new compass heading. Their sense of purpose is now a directional vector that's guiding them. And then they are now, of course, going to attract the people, the situations that they need to fulfill that. But they're always fine tuning and seeing, like, what is on my purpose line and what is not. What is optimum, what is not. And they learn how to make the finer discernments as they move forward along the way.
What do you do in the instance where people initially, thank you so much for sharing that, by the way. I love I love the irrefutable emotional state that then comes
Yeah,
with the transformation that it's like,
yeah,
that's your authentic self. So thank you so much
yeah.
but what do you do to those people that start out and they go, I don't even know what I love? Like, I don't even,
Oh, I
you
love I
know,
love those people. Those are my
yeah, yeah,
favorites. Those are
yeah.
my favorites. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, because we live in a world in which people, many millions of people have shut down their emotional body, their emotional layer. They've gone into what you might call denial, complete denial of being an emotional being. Of
mm.
course, they could be a Gemini, for example, and they might actually have a fundamental orientation to everything in life is nothing but thoughts, ideas, and intellect, and not even connected to their feelings. And we, in some cases, with very strong air sign like Gemini, people can often be terrified, literally
Mm,
terrified of their feelings, not only suppress and denial but terrified. And a lot of research has been done with clinical depression, only to find that it's basically is nothing more than a shutting down of the emotional body, because there's so much pain or whatever that has not been experienced, that your whole emotional body just goes, I give
mm.
up, and then you're dead inside. And then you take drugs, which of course makes it worse, and then whatever, you get the
Yeah, yeah,
idea.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So basically, with people like that, we have to educate them that they are an emotional being, and that's a whole distinct process unto itself. We're
Mm,
learning which we use mindfulness practices to help them let go of the story, and there's all the stories that they've made up in their mind about their human experience, and
mm,
have them drop down into their body and to start to actually feel what is present there.
mhm.
And
It's
then and
sorry.
then of course notice, allow. We use these words: notice, allow, notice, allow, notice, allow,
Mm,
instead of judgments and stories and whatever, all the other things that tend to go on.
mm. I love that. That was actually going to be the question you took it from my mouth, which is, yeah, how to leverage the mindfulness conversation to then allow us to actually go deeper and deeper. And I love what you described. There is notice that it's a story. Allow, notice, allow, notice, allow, notice, allow, and allowing the layers to come out. And one of the tools that I often use with my clients is, when you're allowing things to sort of move out, it's don't get like, sometimes it's dark, some of the stuff that's coming out,
Yeah,
and it's like, don't judge it, like, be grateful for it on its because it's on its way out. It's just on its way
absolutely,
out. It's just
absolutely.
on
Yeah.
its way out. You're finally giving it space to sort of defrag in your brain, and yeah, so
It takes
I love
courage.
that.
It takes real courage, and to do the deep dive. But I always say to people, imagine, a bubble of unconditional love and compassion, wrapping around you, and you're always it's always present around you. And then
Mm,
we also work with the witness observer, the witness and the observer, that can be dispassionate and compassionate at the same time, and just seeing all that is, but not getting caught up in it.
I love that. Howard, let's you touched on a word there, courage. Why does it take so much courage to connect to our purpose? I know in my own story it was true. Watching people transform, it takes them courage. It takes them a stepping out of, yeah, their safe place to step into their purpose. When purpose is innately programmed into most people, in my humble perspective, and maybe you can counter that if it doesn't resonate with you. But why does it take so much courage to
I,
step out onto the path of your purpose?
I think it has to do with several things. On one level, we sometimes just call it resistance, but it's the resistance to the truth, because the truth is scary to us. In other words, like, you might grow up in an environment where you get a lot of messages that the truth will set you free no matter what the truth is, no matter how it feels. The truth will always set you free, and you always want to have that as your highest value. That's, of course, a very empowering environment, of course. But then you might be in an environment, a different environment, which is much more fear-based. And so you get people who literally push the truth away, which is the most terrifying thing imaginable. So you get this tug of war between the desire for the truth, which is inevitable in its human nature, and then the fear of the truth simultaneously, which becomes a huge raging inner conflict that you can see. So in those cases, there's a lot of inner work to be done in clearing out a lot of those ingrained patterns, and what I like to do with people is just get them into a vibration of play, of fun and play, and connected to their inner child, so they can
Mm,
laugh and be joyful, which, as you know, is the most beautiful healing, the ultimate healing force in the universe, right?
mm,
And get them to really be in their child and play. Another really big word we use a great deal is permission. What do
mm,
you have permission for? Do you have permission to know the truth? Do you have permission to feel the truth? Do you have permission to speak the truth? Do you
mm,
have permission to celebrate the truth? And typically not. Or gets more exact when as you go down, there may be only a little bit of permission, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. Okay, so all these stages are in effect the journey to the center of your being, the journey to the divine, the journey to your creativity, the journey to who you really are, and as we said before, in an authentic sense. And everyone, it's going to be different for every person. Every person has got their own unique thing. And now, of course, I cheat. I look at people's birth charts, and I also look at the transits. Are you familiar with transits?
no, tell us more.
Well, the planets are all moving all the time, and
Mm,
they move at different speeds, and
mm,
everyone is in cycles, multiple cycles of evolution at all times. Okay,
mm,
when you when I look at a birth chart, and I look ahead, say a year ahead, and I have all the software can print out all these very elaborate things and wheels and stuff, I can see what planets are going to be in what places at what time.
mm,
So it becomes like a time map stretched out over a year or two, and I can actually see, okay, July, August, this and this and this, or this time period is going to be. And what these transits are basically, they're like your higher self inviting you
mm.
to to grow in a particular direction, or to step into a new reality or a new possibility, or whatever that may be. And all challenges are opportunities in disguise, which is typically revealed. Astrology, better than anything else I know,
Mm,
knows the relationship between challenge and opportunity, because it reveals one leads to the other one. Okay,
mm,
so having this time map, I'm able to guide people in terms of a block of time, how to take advantage of each time period in an optimum way,
mm.
use the optimum tools relevant to that situation, to those challenges, in the best way that they can. So there's another way astrology overlays on top of all the other tools we have.
Mm, I love that. One of the things you spoke to there is the uniqueness of everybody's path. Um, there's yeah, when that actually had me, I don't want to say stumped, but in terms of, yeah, the inspired evolution and working on our offerings for the world, like one of the things we worked on is the Live Your Purpose program. It's a 9-week program which helps people, find and then act on their purpose. um, I love the program, touch wood, just because it's been a culmination of life's work to put into that. But it was such a journey, even just getting to that, and I know you've got your life crafting program. When that it was so easy for me to sort of retreat into not having to create something because for everybody, because it was like, but the purpose is unique to the individual every time. So surely they've got to interface with me one on one and we've got to go there and do the work, you know? But it was after a while I started recognizing actually there are some key elements that are universal towards people walking on this path that are instrumentally helpful. Tell us a little bit about the life crafting program and yeah, like how does that sort of navigate purpose uniquely for each individual?
Well, one of the things that we that's very, very important at the beginning
Mm,
is to see the to see to have a kind of a roadmap, or to have a kind of a an overview from
mm,
a top-down aerial view, to see the whole journey. So if somebody is starting out their journey, say from a corporate job, where they're bored to tears, or they've just hit the brick wall and they're at the end, and they know they have to change their life, and they know they have to reinvent themselves in a whole new way, but they don't
mm,
know where to start, and they've got the mortgage payments, and they can't give away the high salary they're earning, and they're at wits end. They're just at
mm.
wits end. They don't know
Stuck. Yeah.
what to do. Every way they go, it seems like they're stuck, right? So we give them something called a roadmap. It's called the Life Fulfillment Roadmap, and I gave you a link, like a tracking link, where people can get that for free. It's this
Mm.
amazing ebook, like 40, 50 page
I'll
ebook,
put it in the show notes
where
for everybody. Yeah.
it breaks it all down, and lets them see the whole picture, and lets them see that it is actually all doable if you break things down into small bite-sized pieces. No matter how unattainable a goal may seem, but as you know, if you break it down into small bites and pieces, it becomes eminently doable. Now, of course, if you have a support system and good coaching along the way, each step of the way, then once again, each step becomes, more enjoyable, easier, more doable, and the milestones are not that difficult. So anyway, we get people started on that, and there's both external, strategic, professional, business oriented kind of tools, cash flow, so on and so forth, and then all the inner work. Okay, so let's take an example. For a lot of people need
Mm,
cash flow because maybe they're no longer pulling in the big salary, or they need some interim thing to help them pay the bills and get out of survival energy or anxiety with money, for example. Okay, well, we
mhm.
have a whole entire system. It's a little like a program within a program that teaches them how to do that without ever writing a resume or going on a job interview.
Mm, mm.
Which I'm very proud of that fact, because we tap into something called the free agent economy,
Mhm,
which
mhm.
has been existing for decades. Massive, massive, world out there of people everywhere, connecting with people everywhere for all kinds of freelance projects and this, that, and the other thing, for making money. And
Service
yet,
exchange.
there are all these corporate people sitting out there with their masters in information technology, etc., completely, utterly oblivious to the world of just people connecting to people to fulfill a need and make money and get paid. So you have the 17-year-old kid in Boston who finds a company in Chicago, and they cut a deal and they make it happen, or a housewife in London that meets somebody in Texas, and they work something out, and all of a sudden this woman is doing work for the Texas company and making money, and she may not have any degrees, but she knows how to solve a certain kind of problem.
Mm,
Okay,
mm.
or maybe you've heard the stories about how corporations will lay off somebody, and then hire them back again as a consultant to pay them more money than when they left. Okay, so all these things are examples. Okay, so the bottom line is we get people into this mindset and this new, which is sort of an interim entrepreneurial mindset, and
Mm,
then we move them into the functional aspects of how to navigate and how to function and how to make money. Of course, once that happens, then people relax. They just, okay, they relax because they see all their skills and experience now are being put to use, but on their terms.
Hmm.
Not like a, like a wage slave, but
Mm.
as somebody who can actually call the shots and define their reality. Okay, so that's one piece. Then, of course, inner mastery with emotions and beliefs is critical, and then following that, the clarification of life purpose, and genius, and then finally the last piece is launching the ideal business where you make money doing what you love that's based on that purpose.
Mm.
And while it might seem very complicated to do all this, but again, when you look through a lens, you at the where it's visible and doable, right? Then
Mm.
it's simple, right. So anyway, I'm happy to share any part of this. So
Yeah.
your audience has all the parts. We don't have
Mm.
to leave anything out, or we give away the holy
Yeah.
grail, and they can have it all.
I love that. Thank you so much. The intriguing part for me, which is, oftentimes I find this with everybody that I'm coaching onto their path as well, is most of the time people end up becoming their own bosses when you start to unpack them into the journey of purpose. Um, which, some part of me checks myself and recognizes that you can totally be on purpose and, as you put it, be a wage slave. A wage slave. There is definitely space for you to unpack your purpose within an organization, and that could very much be your calling. And there's no
Yeah, but
denying that.
it's statistically not very common.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can we unpack that fact for a second?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
the freedom that's required to be on purpose. Like even this, coaching, having conversations, doing
Well,
podcasts on topics that I love. Yeah,
let me share this with you. Like,
yeah.
just in terms of compatible or incompatible energies, you
Hmm.
take an organization whose fundamental values and orientation is to exploit people in every way they can, to disempower them in every way they can. And so then how do you take that value system and say, okay, I'm going to be able to go there and do this and whatever, fulfill my purpose in that environment. There's
Hmm.
there's a fundamental mismatch of energies. There's a fundamental misalignment. Now, am I claiming that there are no corporations that are enlightened that will allow? No, there are probably some out there that are very enlightened and they want to empower people to be who they, all they can be and contribute their greatest gifts because they know that's going to benefit the organization. But we have to be honest, it's few and far between that will
Hmm.
ever get there. In the future, it may become the norm even. That
Yeah.
may become the norm, but not right at this point. So, people create their own life, their own reality, their own bubble, their own financial reality. So all these things are consistent with their values, and the
Hmm.
opportunities are consistent with their values. Now, you know about my work in cryptocurrency, right? I don't know if
Hmm.
we discussed
Yeah.
that, but
I've come
if
across it.
people, yeah, people can pursue a path with crypto, which generates a pretty good level of financial freedom in say 1 to 2 years,
Hmm.
then needless to say, that makes this whole other rest of the thing that we're talking about, just infinitely more doable
Hmm.
and achievable because you take all those challenges and pressure away, and now it's just play because you're moving up the Maslow hierarchy like really fast. And so
Hmm.
now all there is just fulfill why you're here, be actualized and fulfill why you're here. There's nothing to impede you, nothing to hold you back. Just have fun.
Do you think there is a natural evolution, like to the greater scheme of things, to life itself, that is calling us into greater levels of self-actualization and more alignment to our purpose? Like,
Absolutely. I think that we live in a world where up for over many, many centuries, survival energy and fear have dominated the consciousness of the planet in a major way.
Mm.
Now that we're going through this awakening, this phase of awakening globally, where a lot of the dark, where a lot of the dark energies are, being removed, I think that the natural consequence of that is going to be this continued evolution, is lightening up, this recognition that the universe is truly abundant, uh, that we don't have to struggle, life doesn't have to be a struggle, and all these societal beliefs that have been programmed and indoctrinated into for so long can start to gradually fall by the wayside, and we can start to replace them with a whole other vibration, a whole other level, a whole other consciousness. Now, it might take 5, 10, 20 years for that, or longer for that to happen, but it seems that that seems to be the direction we're headed in.
Mm. And so I'm just going to go there and ask you the question. So I love that. And do you think that's where certain tools are emerging, such as cryptocurrency, certain things in the manifest world, like some of these 3D things are emerging to enable greater levels of freedom and freedom of expression? And tell us a little bit about your
Oh,
perspective on cryptocurrency.
absolutely. Absolutely. Let me go back to astrology for a moment to
Mm.
use a reference point. The United States birth chart, uh,
I love
uh,
that. The
United
United
States
States,
birth
sorry.
chart,
Yeah.
2:15 a.m., July 4th, 1776. We are right now in what is called the Pluto return. The Pluto return means that we are right now, literally was last month in February actually, the planet Pluto returned to the exact position that it was in when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Okay? But what does that mean? Well, it means that it's a death and rebirth cycle. Pluto is death and rebirth, the phoenix rising from the ashes, the ruling planet of Scorpio. So what that means is that America, as we have known it, is dying. It is literally just rubble or becoming that.
Disintegrating.
And we are
Sure.
now faced with this opportunity to emerge once again, newly again, to rebirth what it is America. What is America? What is its identity? Who are
Mm.
we as Americans, etc.? All these deep, fundamental, deep questions. Because let's face it, for 200 years, Americans have been disconnected from that vision, disconnected from that sense of purpose and identity. And so I think the awakening, there's different versions of and aspects of the, which is one part of the awakening, is to recognize that truth and freedom and integrity and rule of law and loving each other and all these values, are important enough to be aware of them and committed to them ongoing. So Thomas Jefferson, famous quotation: "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance," and he
Mm.
meant eternal vigilance. He was not fooling
Mm.
around. He was not exaggerating. He was being literally true. And what we've had, though, for 200 years is Americans asleep at the wheel.
Mhm. Mm.
So in other words, what he suggested, or we literally have been, as a country, as a whatever population, in my view, at the diametrically opposite pole of what he said was needed. And I think that this rebirth, this death and rebirth, is part of it, is to awaken that he meant it, and it was true and it's real what he said. And if we want freedom, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to live that. And you could argue, well, maybe the consciousness of the planet will evolve and go up to a degree that there won't be all these dark people that want to just try to enslave others. Well, that may happen. That may happen. But for the foreseeable future, I still think Jefferson's quote is we need to follow it.
Can we just flicking out on a tangent onto the quote? Is eternal vigilance it I mean, yeah, sorry, find your words, Amrit.
That's all right. Take your time.
When
Take
you
your time.
start, when we're discussing eternal vigilance, it seems counterintuitive to freedom because it's like I have to be wary at all
Well,
times.
I don't think it needs to take the form of suspicion
Mm.
or wariness.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a state of awareness and a state of, an inner state of awareness and really of commitment. And maybe it's an ability, a grown ability to be relaxed and confident, but to recognize how to see when those situations arise and nip them in the bud when they arise and not just assume everything is always okay. But I
Mm.
don't mean vigilance in the sense of worry or suspicion or any of that energy. I don't mean that.
Mm. Mm. I
Yeah,
love that. That.
I think that just awareness so that we're not asleep when
Mm.
things arise, and that when there's uh, forces in our world that deceive or attempt to deceive,
Mm.
and there's whatever motivation behind that, we're not ignorant of it, we're not ignoring it, we're not in denial of it, we're not just, oh, everything is all like sort of a Pollyanna thing,
Mm.
everything's all right. Well, my senator or my congressman will take care of it for me.
Mm. Mm.
It's
Mm.
more
Mm.
like we as individuals need to be responsible. Now, I do believe that we're going to have systems in place in the future which will very possibly make the whole old idea of representative government, obsolete,
Obsolete.
because we will be able to be plugged in as individuals and have our truth, known,
Mm.
and without having to trust somebody, re-elect, and that they're going to represent us accurately and all that kind
Mm.
of thing.
That's
I
an
believe
inspired
that is
evolution in
that's on its way.
itself.
I
Yeah,
believe
that's
that's
inspiring.
we're on our way to having that.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'm so glad touch wood I asked the question because it yeah, what reverberated back. Thank you so much for your sharing and unpacking of that is yeah, freedom is presence, like having presence to
Yes,
be present.
yes.
And then from there flies freedom. And that really opens up so much within me, touchwood. So thank you for sharing that. I really, really
Oh, you're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're welcome. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing about and using the Taoist kind of thing, the
Mm.
light and the dark are a dance. The light
Hmm.
and the dark are a dance with each other, and we all have the dark. Using the Jungian reference of like befriending your shadow, and
Mm.
not being afraid of the shadow, but embracing it. And that dark energy is can be incredibly creative and incredibly powerful when harnessed to the greatest good, when
Mm.
focused to the greatest good. There was a Star Trek episode way back in the very first version of Star Trek.
Mm.
You may remember when Kirk was due to a transporter accident, he was separated into the two parts of himself,
Oh no.
the light and the dark. And everyone, of course, immediately jumped to the conclusion, well, the light is the good and the dark is the bad,
Mm.
because the light was so gentle and soft and kind, and the dark was fierce, But what the moral of the episode, at the very end of the episode, it became clear that his power as a leader came from the dark. The dark fueled his power as a
Mm.
leader. So we want to always, embrace the dark and see what it's telling us, what it's giving us, not be afraid of it,
Mm.
or dreams or whatever it is inside us. And that's what Jung, I think that's what Jung was essentially the collective unconscious, and all the things that
Mm.
Carl Jung did were along those lines. It was just a bit early, and it was a bit early in the evolutionary cycle for us to
Mm.
fully be able to embrace it.
Yeah, but I think it was such a perfect time in terms of we got to stand on the
Yeah,
shoulders of that giant and now have
yeah,
these amazing
yeah,
conversations, and we're right
yeah,
for
exactly,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So bless him. And one of the things I think, yeah, bringing the conversation neatly, diving, grounding back into the conversation on purpose is with shadow and light is, yeah, the space. And you mentioned this briefly, but it's a big piece around challenge and opportunity. One of the transformative processes I take people through is unpacking their story, and we literally go back through your life year by year by year by year by year and look at your wins and look at your losses and look at your wins. And it can be tedious for a lot of people, but once you start getting a bit of momentum, you actually get really curious about, where did I win, where did I lose, where did I win, where did I lose? And it's just events, right? What were the big events in your life? And then you start recognizing that there are certain patterns, certain challenges that keep showing up. Potentially that is connected to my shadow. Or, there are certain wins that keep rocking up, and potentially that is connected to your light. And it's remarkable, because if I can just share, like, one of the biggest things that brought me home to becoming a purpose coach was, 7, and you can argue potentially all the education that went into behind it was 7 to potentially 20 years of career misalignment. Yeah, it's like having so much, being so misaligned in my career was like, whoa, like this really doesn't speak to who I am. And the friction that it created was such a palpable challenge. Like, those that tuning into the podcast know it. So, from
Well,
there, that gave me the space to transform into, facilitating, recognizing purpose as a thing and facilitating that for others. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, it's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I think that this is the dominant societal indoctrination over the 15, 20 years you mentioned is that all answers to all questions lie outside of you, which is the biggest lie, the biggest fundamental lie. And a person could be told that, and they could shake their head and say, yeah, but it would be meaningless because without the skills to do the inner work, to shift those core beliefs, and none of that changes. And so gets to the heart of the matter of how challenges are recognized as opportunities. They're recognized as such when inner work is on the table and it's an option. It's a place where people can go. That's where the opportunity is revealed. It isn't revealed. I always say this is my core principle. Nobody is broken and nobody needs to be fixed. But people need skills that they're not taught. Skills, not carpentry or plumbing, or computer programming, but skills of personal mastery, skills of communication mastery and personal mastery, and skills associated with self-love. Now you might say, well, is that really a skill to love yourself? Yeah, it's a skill. Not just a thing you do in this silly amorphous kind of thing. It's a skill. It takes practice. It takes mastery to master your emotions, to be in that place of cultivating unconditional love, to develop the mindfulness we spoke about earlier, that when you drift away, to bring yourself back again. So all of life crafting is really a set of skills, because not only are you clarifying your life purpose, but more importantly, you're learning the skills for how to clarify your life purpose, which is a meta level learning. There's a meta level to that. So if I can impart the meta level to somebody, they're done. They're self-sufficient. They have everything. They don't need me anymore, which is the goal, right?
I love that. I love that. There is a question that has emerged for me, which is really yummy for me to ask, which is the role of self-love in living a life of purpose. I can feel it in my system, in my cells, in my body, how important it is to, yeah, love yourself, to be able to give yourself all the permission pieces, the permission that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that, please, because it's very right for the people right now in this conversation.
One of the sayings we use is, living a fulfilled life. And so if we say, okay, well, what does that mean? In my view, and I don't think people want success. I think they ultimately want fulfillment, but they don't wind up thinking about what that means. So to me, what it means uh, is, feeling safe and secure in your being, and having your needs, your fundamental needs met, which is kind of Maslow, the base of the Maslow hierarchy, and
Mm.
then knowing why you came to this planet, why you're here, um, and living in alignment with that deepest truth,
Mm.
and knowing what your genius is, because when you are connected to your genius, then you become unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
Your subconscious mind does not want you to know that,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
then you will change. And what is your subconscious mind? It wants you to keep you safe. So, to your subconscious mind, all change is dangerous and unwise.
Mm.
It's always that way, right? So, but then when you make that impact in the world that your unique genius is capable of making, and you experience the relationships, the magical relationships through that service, to humanity, that's the treasure. That's the greatest treasure. And for me personally, over the last 2 years, I got to this point because of my cryptocurrency success, when I would just the money aspect didn't matter. None of that mattered anymore. And where my attention shifted was completely to every relationship of every person that comes in my life, and just reveling and enjoying and appreciating all the dimensions of each relationship, and just feeling the treasure of that.
Mm.
Yeah. So
I
that's kind
love
of
that.
my own process of where I've come to.
I love that. And ultimately, I love yeah, the ode to what is my greatest service to humanity and the planet. Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you so
exactly.
much, Howard. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, that's the simple formula, or the simple breakdown of fulfillment. And
Mm.
then, it's a gift. It's a profound, amazing gift. And then when people, that's why they have this name that people call me the Life Fulfillment Catalyst,
Mm.
for that reason. Anyway, when people show up, and some people come through podcasts, I hear all these amazing stories that they were a person was riding in their car, and they listen to music, but on some given day, for some strange, crazy reason, they just decided to listen to a podcast, and
Mm.
they heard mine, and they get, oh my God, this guy is speaking to me personally and what he's saying. Anyway, so just marveling at all the ways in which the universe
Mm.
orchestrates the magical connections and magical things that happen, and just being in gratitude for that, and then allowing each person to progress with what they're ready for, and accepting that some people are, ready for one little tiny piece, and that's
Mm.
all they can handle, and that's it for them now, and just celebrating that, just
Mm.
celebrating that, and then the other set cases where people can just go to the moon and the stars.
Mm. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. There'll be links to the Map to Fulfillment and Howard's Genius Life book, and also the Life Crafting program in the show notes below. So check them out if you're keen. And Howard, before I let you go, my last little question, which we ask everybody that jumps on the show, your vision, your inspiration for what's evolving here on this time in this planet. What does inspired evolution mean for you? Is it yourself? Is it humanity? Is it the collective? Is it the earth? What does inspired evolution mean to you?
Well, there are different levels, of course, to it. So the humanity level, inspired evolution for me means this awakening that a lot of aware people now, have become very aware in the last 2 years, that we're going through this age of awakening. And inspired evolution to me means over the next several years, being able to see this become widespread, and it become more and more and more, you know, available and dominant in the society, and witnessing it, and being able to support it and cultivate it. Uh, so that's one area. That's one dimension. The other one, more that's more personal to me, is my team and my circle and my team growing and evolving to the point where they can just take life crafting and just run it out there, and do the thing with it, and I can just sort of watch and applaud and cheer them on, you know what I mean? And then I'll come in now and then for fun and whatever to play, just to part of the sandbox and play, but seeing the dream team, basically the dream team that, that can do it all, maybe better than me, perhaps.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Howard, for sharing yourself so abundantly here today. And I
It
know
was
it's not
very
just
fun. I
today.
love your questions. I love your questions. I love the depth to which you go and where you're, very, very unique. I don't find too many podcasters that are, they to that extent as you. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much. That feedback means the world to me. This is my purpose, so I love doing it.
Yeah.
So it means a lot to me to receive that reflection back, especially from someone like yourself that is doing so many podcasts and interviews and helping so many people across the world. Howard, I wanted to thank you not just for your time and energy today, but also because it is a lifetime's work that goes into everything you've shared so abundantly with us. So thank you so much, and not just on behalf of myself, but the Inspired Evolution Tribe, the audience, the collective that we are all weaving together. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much, and wishing you all the best for the future.
Yeah, it's really my pleasure. Enjoyed it immensely.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
it immensely. Love to stay in touch with you. It would be great.
For sure. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.